Okay, namaste and good morning. Saturday morning, our Vivekachudamani day. So, if you have your books, open it on verse number 192. So, verse 192 and 193, the student is asking a question. It's okay to ask question. Okay, this is what we see in Bhagavad Gita also. This is what we see in other Vedic scriptures also. All the Upanishads in a conversation style. But the way we ask, the way disciple asks is very important. It's not to test the teacher, the guru. It's like hey, guru, I do not understand. Please explain it to me. Humility has to be there. At the same time, the questions are supposed to be short. Answers are always more elaborate. This is the style we see, and this is what um, is suggested to us. The way we ask question and how long the question should be. Okay, so let's start with 192. Shishyaha uvacha. So that means a disciple is asking. Okay, Jyoti is just asking me to recap 191 before I move to 192. Okay, so let me do that. 192, we learned that even though the Supreme Self is by nature perfect and ever changing, due to its relationship with the superimpositions, upadhis, it assumes the characteristics of these superimpositions and seems to act just as the equipment do. Like the changeless fire assuming the forms of the iron pieces, which it turns red hot. And last time when I was explaining this verse to you, I said that heat doesn't have any form, but it assumes the form of that iron piece or whatever the piece it is. The same way this Atma, if it's in a human body, it has a human form. If it's in a caterpillar's body, it assumes that. So whatever the form is, but forms are all upadhis and they all change. But the Atma does not change. This is what he is telling us. So now the student is saying, after listening to all this, भ्रमेन अपि वह अन्यथा अस्तुः जीव भावा परात्मनः तत् उपाधे अनादित्वात् न अनादे नाशः इष्यते. Continuation of this question in verse 193 also. Let's do it together. अतः अस्य जीव भावा अपि नित्या भवति संस्मृति न निर्वितेत तत् मोक्षः कथम मे श्री गुरो वद. Brahman, through Brahm, delusion. So out of delusion. Api means or. Anyatha, otherwise. Astu, let it be. Jeev bhavaha, the sense of being a jeev. Okay. Paratmana, for the supreme self. That means that. Upadhe, superimposition. Anaditvat, because of its beginninglessness. Anaditvat. Na means not. Anade, beginningless. Nashaha, an end. Ishyate, can be accepted. Ataha, therefore, asya, it's jeev bhavaha, jeevhood. Api means also, nitya means forever. Bhavati becomes. Samsriti, transmigration. That means coming and going, transmigration. No nirvatet, will not cease. Tatah moksha, liberation from that. Katham means how, me means to me, Shri Guru, O revered teacher. Vad means tell. So student is asking that the Supreme Self has come to consider itself as the Jeev. Jeev means the individualized. So the Supreme Self, the Atma, has come to consider itself as the Jeev. Through delusion or otherwise. Okay, so whatever the reason is, through delusion or otherwise means it could be some karmas. Is a superimposition which is beginningless. That which is beginningless cannot be said to have an end. So that means the Maya is beginningless. How can we end it? It's anadi. So the jeevhood of the self must also be without an end, ever subject to transmigration. Please tell me, O Guru, how then there can be liberation for the self? Okay, so it's just like a Prakriti is anadi, Purush is anadi. I have fallen into it. Whatever the reason is, how can I get out? Seems impossible. So the disciple has understood what the Guru had been explaining so far. He's listening, but still there is a little doubt. When we are following something very closely, sure, even then doubts come. And that's the reason Guru is there to remove the doubts in our mind. That's Guru's job. So that's why this Shishya has put this doubt to the Guru. So by confusion, delusion, or whatever else, the supreme reality has come to this attitude of a limited ego. Jiva bhav means a limited. Even though we are limitless, but I think I'm limited. So that Atma has become a Jivatma. And how? By Maya. And he said, you are the one who's saying Maya is also beginningless, Anadi. Which is beginningless, cannot have an end. So how can Maya end? It can never be destroyed. If it be so, how can I get liberation? If that is the goal of life, it looks like far-fetched idea. So that's why very respectfully he has put this doubt in this question form, which we should wonder too. Because we are told that, yeah, goal is liberation. But we are under the clutches of this beginningless Maya. Now let's see how Guru is explaining. Verse number 194. सम्यक् पृष्ठं तव्या विद्वन् सावधानेन तत् शृणु प्रमाणिकिः न भवति भ्रान्तेः मोहित कल्पनः. Samyak, that means rightly, a good, the right way. Samyak. Prishtam, question. Tavya, by you. With one, O learned one. Savdhanen, carefully. Tat shrino, then listen. Pramaniki, a fact. Praman. Na bhavati, cannot be. Bhrantya, through delusion. Mohit kalpana, imagination conjured up. The Guru replied, O learned boy, O learned person, you have put a proper question. Listen carefully. Things conjured up by imagination, which is itself a product of delusion, can never be accepted as facts. Okay? So Guru heard the question and gave his reply. And his reply is not just this verse alone. His reply is all the way to verse number 206. But before he replies it, he is appreciating the disciples' close observation of the logic and he is complimenting him too. That's why he says that you have put a proper question. Good question, samyak. So he says, well put, indeed is your question. You are intelligent. But now carefully and attentively listen to my reply. So what he's saying, the imagination created by delusion or delusory thinking cannot be accepted as real. The very thought to begin with that there are equipments is a delusory misconception. So what happens is there's an identification with a subsequent delusion. So these are all imagined due to your inner confusion. And imagination which took birth by delusion can never be a fact. So of course, if you say what you're saying is a fact, then of course moksha is impossible. Because this is the logic you are giving. But the mind and the mind itself is a delusion. Because what is mind made up of? The Maya. What is Maya? The delusion. So mind is the one which is delusory. Through a delusion, you can create only imagination, not the fact. And how does this avidya, how does this ignorance ends? Only when wisdom comes. So the idea that moksha cannot be attained is not true. So avidya is beginningless, anadi. It can end when truth is realized. This is what he's going to tell us in the next few verses. Okay, but he is definitely saying that, yeah, your question is good, but your thinking is delusory. Question is good. So 195. Bhrantim vina tu asangasya निष्क्रियस्य निराकृते न घटेत अर्थ संबंधा नभसः नील तादिवत. Bhrantim, delusion. This is verse number 195. Vina, without. Tu means but. Sangasya, for the unattached. Asang. Nishkriyasya, actionless. Nirakritehe, formless. Na ghatet is not possible. Earth sambandha, connection with the objective world. Nabhasa, to the sky. Neel tadivat, like blueness, etc. For the self which is unattached, without activity and formless, there can be no connection with the world of objects other than the delusion. Just like the blueness, etc., seen in the sky. So Guru is continuing his reply. So he's adding some more facts over there. Atma, Paramatma, the reality, absolute, whatever we call, it's unattached and has no actions and no forms. It is one without a second. There's nothing other than it. So self does not have any activity. It has no limbs to act with, no motivation. It has no fields to act in, no objectives to gain. Because it is all pervading, it's formless. This is what the reality is. The concept of any connection between the self and the object is a delusory misconception. And without this delusory misconception and imagination, which got gathered up by delusion, there cannot be a world of objects. So all this which we see, it is out of that. And whenever there's a world of objects, we can have a relationship. We can have identifications. And we think we need to perform the actions. So then he gives us the analogy over here. He says sky is blue or murky or dirty or golden is a delusion. Sky can never be contaminated by color or dirt. It's a delusion at that time. But we still see the blue color because of the lack of correct thinking. And we all say sky is blue. But if we really contemplate it, we'll find that the sky has no color at all. So the same way, if we contemplate on the Atma, we'll find that it is non-dual. It is without any activity or any attachment. But because of the delusions, we start thinking and we identify with the layers which he has been telling us, the koshas, or the world of objects. Through the organs of the perception, we have forgotten who we are. So for an average person, it appears to be the Atma, even though it's actionless, it appears to be conditioned by the body, the mind, the intellect, and that's what the Jeevhood is. But we are not that. But this ignorance can be ended. See, this is all because of the ignorance. Ignorance can be ended only by the direct knowledge of the self, direct knowledge. So that's what he's saying over here. He's taking the students' mind towards this reality. 196. स्वस्य हे द्रष्टुः निर्गुणस्य हे अक्रियस्य हे प्रत्यक् बोध आनंद रूपस्य बुद्धे भ्रांत्या प्राप्तः जीव भावः न सत्यः मोह अपाय न अस्ति अवस्तु स्वभावात्. स्वस्य means its own, swasya. Drashtuhu, witness. Nirgunasya, beyond qualities. Nirgun. Akriyasya of actionless, pratyak subjectively, like a within subjectively. Both ananda rupasya of the nature of bliss and knowledge. Buddhe of the intellect, Bhrantya through delusion, Praptaha gained, Jiva Bhavaha, the Jeevhood. That's like an embodied state, Jeevhood. Na means not, Satya, real, Moha Apaya, when the delusion is dispelled, it has been removed. Na Astihi, there is no. Avastu Swabhavat, because it is unreal by nature. The Jeevhood of the Atma is the witness which is beyond all qualities and activities, and which is subjectively experienced as bliss and knowledge absolute. Bodh Anand Rupasya is unreal and is but a delusion caused by the intellect. So, what is delusion and the caused by the intellect is Jeevhood. So, Atma is all bliss, all peaceful. Since by nature Jeevhood is unreal, it ceases to exist once the delusion had been lifted. So, the whole sadhana is about removing the ignorance. It's not that we have to bring the the Atma in there. Atma is there. We got to just remove this delusion, this covering. So by nature, the self is without action, without qualities. Qualities are over here, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Those are the qualities of the prakriti, not of the Atma. So what is Atma? Constant knowledge, bliss, absolute. That's the Atma. Because it's the nature of bliss. And that nature of bliss can be experienced only when we transcend the Maya. So by delusion, this Atma gets identified with the intellect and acquires Jeevhood. A delusion may give us an experience. Sometimes it seems like real, but being a mere delusion, it has no existence. Okay? See, just like a shadow or even a reflection, it seems real, but there's no existence to it. So this is what it is. This is where he is taking our mind to. 197. Yavat bhranti tavat ev asya sata mithya jnana ujrim tasya hai pramadat rajvam sarpah bhranti kalin ev bhrante nashe na ev sarpah api tadvat. Yavat, as long as bhranti, delusion, tavat, so long. Ev means also, asya, its sattah, existence. Mithya gyan, error of judgment. Ujrimbhatasya, caused by. Pramadat, due to illusion. Rajvam, in the rope. Sarpaha, snake. Bhranti kalin, seen during delusion. Ev means only. Bhrantehe, of delusion. Nashehe, destroyed. Na eve, never. Sarpaha snake, api means also, tadvad, so too. Having been caused by an error of judgment and false understanding, the jeevhood can exist only as long as the delusion lasts. The rope is mistaken to be the snake only when there is an illusion. Once the illusion is destroyed, there can be no snake. So, in this case, okay. So the whole journey over here is to remove the delusion. Only then the real is already there. So he's concluding the argument over here, telling the student that as long as there's a confusion and delusion, so long there will be the existence of the individuality, the jeevhood. So jeevhood and delusion, they go hand in hand. So delusion also means the non-apprehension of reality. Non-apprehension of the reality gives us the misapprehension. Not understanding that it is a rope, we start thinking that it's a snake and we get afraid. Out of that fear, anything can happen. And this is what's happening over here. We have forgotten who we are and we start thinking that we are the body, or we are the relationships, or we are what we have accomplished. This misapprehension can have many, many different forms. I am the body, I am the mind, I'm the intellect, I'm better than others, I'm worse than others. I am successful or I am unsuccessful. These feelings in aggregate constitute the jeevhood. Because they have been arisen from the delusion, they will last only as long as the delusion lasts. So what do we have to do is find out who we are, have that knowledge, experience that. Just like with the knowledge of the rope, the misconception that it is a snake, it just vanishes right away. The same way, the Atma in us, as long as we don't experience it, we just start thinking that we are this or that through our body, through our mind, through our intellect. So this experience comes not as a result of any special sadhana. It's no special sadhana. All sadhana can help the seeker as long as the sadhana which you are doing, which can withdraw you from the mind and the body and intellect and take you towards yourself. Any sadhana. It's not that this sadhana will do it. Whatever sadhana works for you. And it needs to happen immediate. And it does happen. At this point, you can be there immediately. Because it's already there. See, just like if there is a rope outside, you thought it's a snake. You can turn the light on. If there's a bulb out there, you can take a candle over there. You can take a kerosene lamp there. Or the day-night light can come. Whatever light. Doesn't have to be a certain kind of a light. As long as it's a light and you see it. The same thing I'm trying to tell you, no matter which sadhana you do. It could be a Karam Yoga, it could be a Bhakti Yoga, it could be a Jnana Yoga, or it could be a Hatha Yoga, as long as you have the experience of the self. Okay? In Kathopanishad, the Rishi said, this experience is like lightning. It is sudden, it is quick. It's a fraction of a moment it can happen when the mind is withdrawn from all its preoccupations. That's why in the sadhana, what do? We want to control our mind because mind is the one which is creating the delusions. We are telling the mind which is so turbulent, mind which is so strong. What do the rishis say? Rishis, they say that mind is like a drunkard monkey and bitten by a scorpion. That's how restless the mind is. So that's why sadhana is to quieten the mind so that we can know who we are. So any kind of a sadhana can help because we are trying to prepare our mind, quieten the mind. So experience of this, whether you want to call it infinite or the Paramatma or Atma, does not depend upon anything. It's not an immediate experience. That means it's not gained through instrument of any equipment. It's immediate. Teachers help, scriptures can help, sadhana can help, they all help. But ultimate experience we need to do with the help of those. It's just like if I need to cut an apple, I have several knives. Use any one of those. But ultimately I have to cut the apple to eat the apple. So the infinite is your essential nature. It is an immediate experience. Remember that. 198 and 199, they go together. Anaditvam avidyayah karyasya api tatha ishyate utpannayam tu vidyayam avidyakam anadir api prabodhe swapan swapanvat sarvam sah moolam vinashyati anadi api idam no nityam prak abhava iv sufutam. Anaditvam, beginninglessness, avidyaya, of ignorance, karyasya, of its effects. Api means also, tatha means similarly. Ishyate is considered. Utpannayam, knowledge. Tu means but, vidyayam also, knowledge. See, utpannayam is like a rising of the knowledge, rising. So vidyayam, knowledge. Avidyakam, effects of avidya. Anadi, beginningless. Api means even. Prabodhe, on waking up. Swapanvat, like a dream. Sarvam means all, like an entire. Sahamulam, along with its roots. Vinashyati is destroyed. Anadi, beginningless. Api means also. Idam, this. Na means not. Nityam, eternal. Prak abhavaha, prior non-existence. If means like, sufutam means is evident. So too, avidya and its effects are said to be beginningless. But when there is rise of avidya, then avidya, even though it is beginningless, is destroyed. Root and branch. Just as dreams are destroyed on waking up. See, when we wake up, no matter how real that dream seemed like, it's gone. Because there's no existence of it. In the dream you saw you are a king or a queen, when you wake up, you know that was just a dream. So the same thing over here. All this is a bigger dream. Nonetheless, it's a dream. Okay? So, but when there is a rise of Vidya, then avidya, even though it is beginningless, is destroyed root and branch, just as dreams are destroyed on waking up. The phenomenal universe is not eternal. It is evident, like the former non-existence. Okay, so you can see that how much effort this guru is putting in to answer that question which was put in by the student. He's not saying that you don't know. By using different examples, he's trying to bring the truth out for the student. So when the cause is beginningless, its effects must also have the same nature. If you want to look at the cause and effect theory. So ignorance, which is beginningless, must necessarily produce effects which are also beginningless. So, but avidya is the cause of that. Ignorance was the cause of that first thought. But when the true knowledge of the self is born, when the right apprehension is born, the non-apprehension ends. So this great cause can be solved or dissolved with the help of knowledge. So ignorance, antithesis of ignorance is knowledge. Where there is a knowledge, ignorance cannot be. Just like wherever there's a light, darkness cannot be. Light and darkness cannot remain in one and the same place at one and the same time. The moment light is brought into a cave also, cave which has been dark for ages, bring the light in there, darkness goes away. So even though we did not know ourselves for birth after birth after birth, but the minute you bring the light, this ignorance goes away. So when the knowledge of the self is there, ignorance, and not just the ignorance, ignorance with all its effects. And what are the effects? Non-apprehension. With all its misapprehensions, will have to end. You cannot stay ignorant when the light is there. That's why they always say if a person has self-realized and thinks that I am better than others, no, there's no self-realization. Okay. On waking up, he says, the dream ends fully. It's not only the part of the dream is ended, all of the dream has been ended. It's not only the nightmares will end. Even the good part of the dream is just a dream. So it's not just if somebody is rebuking me, but if somebody is praising me also, it all ends, all the misapprehension. So when the truth is apprehended, the effects along with their cause, that means the causal body, end. And what is a causal body? All the impressions, all the vasanas, or the subtlety of the effects of the past actions, that's a causal body. So anadi api tamna nityam. See, it's almost like the unmanifest pot was in the mud. Even before the pot was made, when the pot is made, the pot which was in it unmanifested is now manifested. But now when the When was the potential part in the mud? The possibility of the part in the mud was beginningless, they say. So in the same way, it seems like it's there, but it can be get rid of. So Prag Abhav, like before its actual manifestation, the manifested part was not there. The moment it manifested, its potential state, which was beginningless, ended. Okay. So Guru is saying, even though a vidya is beginningless, it ends with the apprehension of reality. This is what we have to remember. So in a way, he's saying that even though your question, you put it beautifully, but it's not really a great question after all. Okay, because you have not understood it properly. That's what he's saying. Let's do two more verses, 200 and 201, and then we'll end the class. अनादि अपि विध्वंसः प्राग् भावस्य वीक्षितः यत् बुद्धि उपाधि संबद्धात् परिकल्पित परिकल्पितम् आत्मनि जीवत्वं न ततो अन्यत् तु स्वरूपेण विलक्षणः संबंधः तु आत्मनः बुद्ध्याः मिथ्या ज्ञान पुरः सरः anadi beginninglessness api means also with vansaha an end with once prag bhavasya of the prior non-existence vikshita is found like a seen or observed vikshita yat means which buddhi upadhi sambandhat due to its contact with the conditioning of intellect sambandh. Okay. Parikalpitam is imagined. Atmani in the self. 201. Jivatvam, jivhood, or the embodied state. Na means not, tataha, from it. Anyat, the other. Tu means but. Swarupen, your own form. Vilakshanaha, different. Sambandhaha, connection. Tu means but. Atmanaha, of the self. Buddhyaha, with the intellect. Mithya Gyan Puraha Saraha. Mithya Gyan Puraha due to the false knowledge. Puraha Sara means arises. Although it is beginningless, former non-existence is found to have an end. So too the Jeevhood, which is imagined to be in the Atma. Through its apparent conditioning in the superimposed attributes, like the intellect is not real. But the other means the self over here, is intrinsically different from the Jeevhood. Okay? So the Atma and the Prakriti, there's a difference. The relation between the Atma and the intellect is due to the false knowledge. So what he's saying that they got connected and your real nature you have forgotten about. You remember only the upadhis and you think it's only who you are. So the concept of individuality has arisen of the consciousness identifying with the reflection. So it's almost like if I start thinking that I am my shadow or I am my reflection, and that is a Jeev Bhav, the individuality. So because of the conditioning, the self, the Om appears to be the Jeev. If I can understand myself to be of the nature of the self, the sorrows which come from the individuality, they will end right away. Pain can be there in the body, but the suffering in the mind won't be there. Because identification is with the real there. And how can we do it? How can we end it? What is the secret technique? It says you got to experience it. Intellect, when it's turned outwardly, creates the Jeevhood. The same intellect, when it is turned inwardly towards the Atma, then this knowledge takes place, experience comes. So instead of becoming extroverted all the time, become introverted some of the times. Because the extroverted nature has brought all these fluctuations in our mind. And we have forgotten who we are. And that's why we can never find a real and lasting happiness. Because the place for the real and lasting happiness is inside. It's residing inside, but we don't pay any attention to it. The mithya gyan, the false knowledge which is outside, we think that is true. But as soon as the intellect leaves its misconceptions, turns towards the eternal self which is already there, even though the avidya is beginningless, it will end. How? With the dawn of the knowledge. So this is what he's telling us, that it can end and it needs to end. Okay. So let's stop it here if you have any questions. And then Saturday. Who sings Saturday? Kamala does?
हाँ जी
Yeah.
मैं यहाँ पर हूँ.
All right. So Kamala is there. So we'll start next week's class. So he's still trying to explain it to us. We'll see that continuation of this too. But from today's lesson also, at least we should be hopeful. Sadhana we have to do with this proper understanding that what is the reality and what is non-reality. Okay? Because we have been thinking the non-reality as a reality for so long. And effects of that, we feel it's almost like if somebody has been eating the junk food, no exercise, no taking care of their body, and all of a sudden realizes I need to eat better, I need to exercise. It will take some time for the body to get better. So we cannot just think that we learn few mantras over here, few verses, few classes, few minutes of meditation. Sure, it's good, but we got to continue. And one of these days, just like he said, it's immediate. It's not immediate. That experience will happen. Once that experience happens, then there's no doubt. Once a person sees it's a rope, not a snake, there cannot be any delusion. There cannot be any fear. All of its effects go away. Okay, so let's do the The Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om
Om
Shanti
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 Shanti.